Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today for Meet Us in the Garden, October edition. My topic today is going to be Say Hello to Spring Early. So, it may not look like this right now, but we all know it's coming. Okay, so if anybody joined us last month, Becky did a phenomenal job of telling us all about bulbs. Today we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into bulbs and see how you can enjoy some of those spring blooms a little bit early this year. I know it doesn't quite look snowy and cold and icky yet, but again, like I said, we live in Northeast Ohio. We all know what's coming. September and October is a great time to get started if you want to see those early signs of spring inside your home during those cold, dark, dreary winter days when we're all like, is it ever going to stop? It's too cold. I can't take it anymore. The technique to do this is going to be called forcing, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about the spotted lanternfly. We always like to do some education on that for you guys. We're going to look and talk about what is forcing, some bulbs that are good to force, supplies you're going to need, and it's very simple, the process, and then I've got some pictures of results of forcing bulbs. Okay, but first let's do our little spotted lanternfly. It's a new invasive. It's been around for a while. I'm sure people have heard about it. If you've been to any of our talks, you've heard us talk about it before. It's now in 19 states, so it is spreading across the country. It has been detected in western Lake County, so it's spreading. And we want to heighten awareness of this. And one of the other reasons we want to talk about it is because one of the things the spotted lanternfly produces is honeydew as it feeds. And that's going to attract other insects that we don't want to encourage, such as wasps, any of those stinging bugs. So the spotted lanternfly in itself is not harmful to us. It's sometimes those other bugs that come to eat the residue that it leaves. So currently we're in the adult stage here on the lower right-hand side, the July to November. And this is where we're going to be seeing the adults. And within the next few weeks, those adults are going to be laying eggs. You want to look for eggs on any type of rough surfaces. So we're talking stone walls, concrete, brick, trees, rough bark trees and things like that. You can destroy those egg masses by simply scraping them off into some hot soapy water. That'll kill the egg masses, or even just scraping them off as a whole. So be aware of that. You want to look for the spotted lanternfly in itself. And what do we do to get rid of it? Everybody? Squish it, kill it, get rid of it, correct. Okay. Now last month we had a lot of questions about how to identify the tree of heaven, which is its preferred source. So I put these in here to help with that. And if anybody wants to take a picture of that info sheet on the left, you can. I'll wait a minute. To the right is what this tree of heaven looks like. It has that distinct topper there. And then to the left is an information sheet from Ohio State on how to identify it, because it does look very similar to like sumac trees and things like that, so it can be hard to identify. And where you see one tree of heaven, you're going to see lots of tree of heaven. It spreads very easily. So why are we so concerned about it? It's because it can be so devastating to our nursery stock and things like that. Not only does it feed on the tree of heaven, but it also likes to eat grapes and hops, apple trees, maple trees, and other nursery stock. And we know in Lake County we have a huge nursery industry. So the potential for it to devastate that industry is there, and we want to be aware of it and do what we can to curb it if possible. Here's just some information about how to report it. You can call that number, you can email, you can even go online. So if you do see one, of course, kill it and then go ahead and report it. All right, let's get into our main topic, why everybody's really here, talking about forcing bulbs. So what is forcing? Forcing is a method that you can grow plants that makes or forces them to flower at a different time than they normally would under normal conditions. You are tricking the bulb into believing it has had its dormant period, spring has arrived, and it's time to wake up, rise, and shine. If you've ever attended any of the home and garden shows in those early spring months, January, February, March, you've seen evidence of forcing bulbs. When you go and buy those Easter lilies at the stores, or any of those pretty little daffodils that are growing in the pots come February and March, that's another example of bulbs that have been forced. Even poinsettias, when you buy them for the holiday season, they have been tricked into flowering at a particular time by forcing them. So you can see all those beautiful colors, and they get that because they've been forced to grow and bloom at that particular time that we want it. These are just some pictures I've taken. That upper left corner is a amaryllis that I bought at Menards. I was walking through, they had all these boxes of them discounted, and this little amaryllis was poking out of the side of the box, and I was amazed that it was like, wow. And so I had to bring it home, and I grew it last year, so that's another example of forcing. And then the other two were taken at the Home and Garden Show in Cleveland a couple years ago. I just fell in love with that chrysanthemum. It had spoon quills for the flowers, if you've ever seen them. They're shaped like a little spoon. And then I always love to see the daffodils and stuff too. So our good old Cleveland Home and Flower Show. All right, now there's a couple of techniques you can do to force bulbs, one of which is growing above water. You can grow them in pebbles above water, or you can grow in soil. What I'm gonna really focus on today is growing them in soil, okay? This is just an example of growing them above water. Hyacinths are typically what you see grown this way. It's kind of like their little forte. And basically all you do is you place the bulb in a vase and you put a little bit of water right up to the bottom of it where the corm is, and then you let it start growing. To the left, you see a typical forcing vase, as they call them, and to the right is a picture I found of some people. Oop, I should have taken that off there. It's a Pinterest. Oops, my bad. Of somebody who grew them in mason jars with just doing the rim. They took the inner seal out and just grew them in a rim. The trick here is you have to make sure the water stays right at the base of it. If not, the bulb will dry out, and you don't want to put too much water because then that'll actually drown the bulb and it won't work. Another example of growing them in pebbles, I've seen, actually a couple years ago I went to a presentation on this, and it's basically the same thing. You're going to use a wide open vase or vessel. You're going to put some rocks in at the bottom. Let's see if I can do the pointy thing. Oh, right there. And then you put your bulb on top of it, and again, add the water just to the base of the bulb, and the roots will then grow down into the rock structure. This is an example of a regular vase versus a forcing vase. You can see the difference. If you do decide to do this method in a vase like this, you're going to have to put the rocks and pebbles in there because, again, if you submerge the bulb itself, it's going to rot and you're not going to get any blooms. And then to the right is an example of the forcing vase. You can actually buy this. I've seen this tons of places where you can buy the hyacinth bulb in the vase and you're ready to go. And this is the technique of growing in soil. This is what I'm going to focus on today because this is the way that I kind of like it. So lots of different bulbs that you can grow in this technique. There's a list here for you. Some are going to be easier than others, such as amaryllis, paperwhites, tulips, and daffodils. They fall into that easier category. I can tell you for my amaryllis, I literally did nothing but take it out of the box, put some water in it, and put it on my table, and it took off. So that's how simple it was. It's important to note, though, you have to figure out if your bulbs need to be chilled, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because that does make a difference. Some bulbs don't, some bulbs do. And as you can see at the bottom, this is not an all-inclusive list. When I was doing my research, it said pretty much you can force any type of bulb you want to. It's just whether or not it requires chilling and how hard it is going to be to do it. So what is chilling? Chilling is that period of time when we're tricking the bulb into thinking it's got its dormancy period. You will place it in a cool, steady temperature environment for an extended period of time to trick that bulb into that dormancy period. For those ones that require it, they have to think they've had their little winter slumber, and then as the temperature rises, it's like, oh, it's time to wake up and do my thing. Again, not all bulbs are going to require a chilling period, particularly amaryllis and paperwhites do not. Just about everything else does require some type of chilling. So chilling, and to understand this, we need to know the importance of why you have to chill these bulbs. And we want to consider how spring bulbs grow in their natural environment. They bloom, they grow leaves all spring long, they stay green and pretty all summer long, and then the leaves start to die back in the fall. Those leaves are producing energy that'll get stored in the roots for the following year. As the bulbs stop their top growth, they begin to work on their root growth down here. Down there. That will continue until the weather gets too cold and they start to go into their dormancy period. So when we start getting into December, January, those colder months. Cue winter, the bulbs will receive their natural chilling period during those winter months, and during that time, the plant roots will continue to form and their stem length will increase. And as the soil warms up in the springtime, the bulbs will become undormant and they'll start to grow and do their thing. Now this picture, just to tell you, is an example of doing that chilling in the pots outside. They've got the bulbs actually planted in a pot in the ground, and then what they've done is they've placed some mulch up here on the top, which is a technique you can do if you want to. Most people will chill in the house. This chart is just to give you an example of various bulbs and the cooling time it takes. So if you look over here, here's our cooling time, and then here's the weeks to bloom. What you need to do is you need to add these two together. So if we look at the crocus, it has a cooling time of 12 to 14 weeks, plus an additional 2 to 3 weeks to bloom. So you're talking overall of 14 to 17 weeks in total. This is where you have to do a little calculation, a little math, not hard math, easy math, to figure out when you want it to bloom, ideally. You have to count back to get when you need to start doing this chilling dormancy period. Basically what it says is that expect about a 3-month process between chilling and then waking it back up before you really start to see those blooms. Again, every bulb is a little bit different, so you want to kind of become familiar with how long it's going to take and when do I really need to start that. What they say is if you want to have blooms in January, you need to start it in September. If you're looking for spring blooms in February, November, February would be October, March would be November, and then April would be December. At the end of the recommended chilling period, though, you want to begin checking your containers to see if you have any roots starting to protrude from the bottom of the pot. That's going to indicate that the bulb's ready to come out of its cold environment and be placed in some indirect warmer weather to start growing. If you've stored bulbs in a refrigerator prior to planting, you have to subtract that time from the storage time because you don't want to over chill them either, because that won't work. So if you bought your bulbs now and you're not planning on planting them for another couple months and you put them in the refrigerator to keep them good, subtract that time from your overall chill time to figure out when you need to get them started. This will also stunt their growth. You'll have shorter stems and the flowers will not be as developed. During the chilling period, you also want to check them periodically to make sure they're not getting too dry, and you want to water them accordingly. Don't overwater. I can't stress that enough. You don't want to overwater these things. Okay, let's talk supplies. First, you're going to need containers, as you can see right there, and there's a variety of containers there. There's no perfect container. It's whatever you want. But basically, the container should be at least 6 to 8 inches deep, have good drainage holes, and will be something you can put in your refrigerator if you choose to use that method. You want to wash any used pots with clean soapy water to make sure they're nice and clean so you don't introduce any bacteria or anything unwanted into your growing environment. Next up, we have our soil mixture right here. You want to use a commercial potting soil. Don't use garden soil. It's too dense. It will not allow for enough aeration and water flow to get through there. The key ingredient in any potting mixture is going to be air, so you want something light and fluffy. Ideally, potting mixture should have a very kind of fluffy look to it. You can make your own if you want to, if you don't want to invest in buying it, but you can make your own as well too. And then the fun part is picking what you want to grow. Decide what you want to grow and review how long of a chilling period they will require. Bulbs should be large, firm, and unblemished. It's important to look over your bulbs as soon as you purchase them. So if you're doing mail order, open the bag up and look at them right away. If you're getting them at a store, same thing, check them out. You want to inspect the bulbs to ensure that they are in good shape and quality. And if you're not going to plant them right away, one of the ways you can store them is just putting them in a mesh bag in a cool, dry location. It's important to have a good plan for the bulbs that require chilling. Check those calendars to see when you want the first bulbs to start blooming, and then you're going to count back the number of weeks when you need to get it planted. A consistent chilling temperature is required. The ideal range is between 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can use a refrigerator, a root cellar, an unheated garage would work as well. You want to make sure, though, that you don't freeze your bulbs because that's going to kill them right away. I made that mistake one year. I bought all these beautiful bulbs, and I wasn't going to plant them right away, so what did I do? I threw them in my freezer. I didn't know. Way before Master Gardener days. Took them out next spring, all excited, planted them. Not a single bloom, so learned my lesson. Don't put them in the freezer. Okay, let's talk about the process now. And it's not that complicated, trust me, it really is not. Again, depending on the desired bloom time, you want to plant your bulbs between September and December. Do not follow the outdoor planting instructions you might have on the packaging. We're going to ignore that because we're not going to follow that method. It's important to note that bulbs can only be forced one time, typically. If you choose to plant them outside when the temperatures are warm, you take them outside and put them in the ground in the wintertime or in the summer thinking, oh, I'm going to get another bloom. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. Usually they have to grow a year or two before they kind of regenerate themselves because forcing is very hard on them. It depletes a lot of their natural nutrients and so forth. Sometimes I've had plants that I've gotten as gifts, little baby daffodils and stuff that I've planted that have come up phenomenally, and then I had other ones that I've planted outside with no luck at all. So it's just kind of a gamble, really. Forcing bulbs, like I said, can take a lot of the stored nutrients from the bulb, and then they need to regenerate that if you do choose to plant them outside when you're done. Bulbs that were forced using the water methods, so either in above the water or in pebbles above the water, need to be discarded because that pretty much drains them of everything and they're not going to bloom again. So don't really, everything I read said don't waste your time trying to get those to bloom again. So here we go. Time to get your hands dirty. So you're going to fill your clean containers about 1/3 full with your potting mixture. You're going to stand the bulbs in the mixture with their root side down and the little pointy part up to the top. Do not press the bulbs into the soil. You don't want to push them in. You're just going to kind of lay them in there gently so they're resting there on top of it. And it's okay to overcrowd in this situation. I know everybody talks about spacing and all those kind of things, but because we're forcing, it's okay to kind of put them close together. They can be close but not touching. So what I like to do is think about it when you were taking your kids on a road trip and about 15 minutes into it, you get this, Mom, exactly, you two in the back row, I'm talking about that. She's touching me, and the brother's like, no, I'm not. So a little bit of space, but you still want to make sure the bulbs aren't touching. And then again, when you fill the rest of the pot in, you don't want to pack down the soil. You're just going to put it in there loosely to about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch close to the rim at the top. Bulbs such as daffodils, tulips, and hyacinths can be planted so that the tips of the bulbs are just above the soil level. So right here, right above the soil level. This pot over here is an example of tulips, and as you can see, the very tip is just kind of hanging out. For tulips, you want to plant the flat side of the bulb towards the outside of the pot. As you can see here, here's that flat side, and you're going to plant that so that it's pointed towards this side of the pot, so that as it grows, that one big leaf will grow in that direction and kind of make your pot look prettier as a whole. Small bulbs such as crocuses, grape hyacinths, or snowdrops, can be planted and covered up completely. You don't have to leave the tips of those hanging out. And again, like I said, you're going to fill the containers with about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch in the soil up to that rim. You're going to give the bulbs a good watering after planting and when the soil feels dry. It's not necessarily in every week, but just check them periodically to see what that dryness is of the soil and water accordingly. You don't want to allow the soil to dry out completely because that will dry the bulbs out as well, and then you won't get any results at all. Oh, the other thing is you don't have to fertilize when you force bulbs, so just disregard that step altogether. So this is just an example of what the pot should look like when you've done planted it. You've got your soil mixture, down here at the bottom. Here's your bulb, and I'm assuming this is probably a tulip or something, and you can see the tips hanging out, and you have enough space here above the rim to allow for watering and not get any runoff of that soil. That's ideally what you want to look for. If you're doing the crocuses, something smaller like that, those bulbs are going to be deep down in here, not deep, but totally covered in soil. Once your bulbs have been planted, it's time to give them the cold treatment. If using the refrigerator, you want to cover your pots with a plastic bag of some sort with some holes poked in it to allow for some ventilation. You can also use an unheated attic, cellar, garage, or even a cold frame outside. If you're going to do the cold frame, remember that you need to cover the pots with mulch and soil to keep them from freezing. So depending on how deep our freeze goes, you need to be mindful of that if using that cold frame, you want to protect those pots from freezing all the way through. Now you mark your calendars, set your reminders on your phones for when you need to remove the pots from their chilling period. Remember, they will need between 12 to 13 weeks in general of chilling time, and then you want to add in the bloom time as well. And the amount of time to bloom once they're out of that cool environment. You periodically still want to check them even though they're in the refrigerator or the attic to make sure again that they're not getting too dry, and then water as you need to. Another technique you can do is if you want to have a continuous display of blooms through that spring season, bring your pots out at varying intervals. Don't bring them all out at the same time. Take a couple out, and then wait a couple weeks, and take a couple more out, and then that way they'll all start to wake up and bloom and grow at different times. Here's a picture that I found of with the plastic on it, and then here's some that don't have the plastic covering them. They even have some hyacinths in here, but again, hyacinths don't require, I'm sorry, not hyacinths. Yes, those are hyacinths. They don't require that chilling period. So, your chilling time is over. It's now time to take them out. You want to get them to start growing so you can have those blooms in March for your birthday. Hint, hint, my birthday's in March. Place your containers in a warm location, ideally 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and indirect sunlight. It's important that they have indirect sunlight. You don't want to put them right in that sunny spot because you'll shock them. They won't do it. They will begin to grow and form those the leaves and the flower buds. When the leaf stems start to turn green, you want to move them into a sunnier location. That means that they're ready to progress to a different location where they're a little more sunny. And then in about 3 to 4 weeks, you should have your blooms and everything should start showing their beautiful little flowers here. So here we have some daffodils. These are some tulips. This one picture I found, they look like they just use a shoe rack to put close to the window and stuff. And again, to prolong the blooming period, you want to pull those pots out at different intervals. You can also have them bloom longer if you move them into a cool location at night. I read that several times, that don't just keep them in that windowsill, but if you want them to bloom longer at nighttime, move them into a cooler location, and that'll help prolong their blooms, according to my research. And then you get to enjoy. These are just some pictures of various little plants. We have some hyacinths up here, some grape hyacinths down here, some purple hyacinths. These I love in the springtime. There's nothing better than that smell when you walk out in the garden early spring and you smell that. Imagine that in your house in the middle of March and February when, again, we're getting our 15th blizzard and you've shoveled enough snow that you can barely make your way out of the house, as has happened around here. I want to talk a little bit about what you do if you want to try to reuse those bulbs. So, should you save your forced bulbs? Saving forced bulbs after they bloom for planting in that outside landscape or garden in spring is an iffy proposition. The probability of the forced bulbs successfully blooming the following spring is doubtful, but perhaps you'll have better luck in the next year that comes. As with most tulips and hyacinths, they pretty well have been spent, and everything I read said don't bother trying to replant those, they're not going to come up again. But again, I've had success, so hit or miss. If you want to try it, go ahead and try it. If not, you can just dump them and get rid of them. You can treat forced bulbs like houseplants and keep the foliage green and healthy to regenerate the bulbs. So if you want to keep them in the house until it's ready to plant outside, trim off those dead flower stems, water them periodically, and just treat them like a regular old house plant. Amaryllis, up here in the upper left, can be saved for year to year, and you can reuse those. I don't know how long, I couldn't find that information, but it did say that you could save amaryllis and bloom them again. You want to place the potted plant in an outdoor location in the summertime and fertilize it as needed. So you're just going to place it outside, let it do its thing, water it when it needs it, and kind of leave it alone. When fall arrives, you're going to cut off all the foliage. So you're going to cut it back, and you really can't see it, but you're going to cut off all the green up to the top of the bulb, and you're going to stop watering it. If you've planted the bulb in the garden, you're going to dig it up and replant it in a container with new potting mixture. And if you've kept it in the pot, you're going to take it out, kind of clean it up, and put it back in the pot with potting mixture. It did also say that amaryllis like to be pot bound, so you're going to go with a smaller pot rather than a bigger pot. They don't like to have a lot of root space. You're going to place it in a cool, semi-dark location in late September and withhold water. And you're going to leave it there for about 2 months. After the late fall resting period, you're going to bring the pot into indirect sunlight, and as the leaves begin to grow and emerge, you're going to move it into that sunnier location. I'm actually trying this myself. I had gotten a bunch of amaryllis as gifts last year that were beautiful flowers, absolutely gorgeous, and so I have all my little pots trimmed back, tucked away in my little mud room that I have, testing this to see if I can get them to bloom again. So check in next year to see how I did. That's it. Before we close up here, I just wanted to give everybody our Master Gardener helpline if you need it. It's currently available. You can talk to somebody live April through October, Tuesday mornings from 9 to 11, so you have a few more weeks, and there's the number. And then during those non-staffed hours or off hours, you can always call and leave a voice message. They will take those and get back to you. Or you can even do email to the mcglakecounty@gmail.com. And again, one of our Master Gardeners will get that request, they'll look into it, and they'll get back to you with the information. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Meet Us in the Garden. Next month is basic composting, is that correct? Yes. So in November, that first Saturday in November, could join us again. We're going to talk about basic composting. Thank you so much. You're welcome.